Cyber Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts, that's namely me, Rory Duncan.
And me, Christina Richmond. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations. Today, how are you, Rory?
Yeah, not too bad, although that's probably being more optimistic than I said a few minutes ago. But hey, we're almost at the end of 2025. It'll be good to see the back of it. And
Yes.
Let's look optimistically at 2026. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. No, I'm okay. It's been a rough couple of days, as you know, but I agree. 2025 was not my favorite year.
Yeah.
I have a really good feeling about 2026. However, what we're going to do today does look back at 2025, and there are some good things, right? So this is part one.
That's right. Yes, and part one that your folks are listening to just now, so that'll be airing on the 22nd of December, and then we'll have a part two, which will air on the 29th of December. So,
for those people who are bored over the holidays, they'll have lots to listen to.
Right. If you're having issues digesting your Christmas meals, put this on and it will help you fall asleep.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah.
No, I was going to say we'll be discussing a bunch of things that happened over the last 12 months.
Yes.
We'll also be looking at some of the new products and services, acquisitions, and emerging companies, and so on, won't we, Christina?
We will, but what about the ho-hum? Weren't we going to do a little bit on the kind of meh stuff that we heard over the year?
Yes, and so it won't be the ho-ho-ho, it will be the ho-ho-hum, won't it, Christina?
The ho-ho.
Yeah.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah. Certainly a lot of things were announced, and we saw a lot of new things and sort of semi-new things and things that are purporting to be new and innovative, but not everything can be, can it?
That's right. So we'll talk about what we're going to call the zeros of the year. Never fear, we're not naming people. We're not even naming companies. We're naming trends and marketecture and washing of things. But of course, what's more exciting is the heroes of the year.
That's right. We'll be giving out, it won't be this episode, but next episodes we shall be giving our own special Good Job Awards to mark the heroes of 2025. That's right, the Good Job Awards. Not patronizing or condescending at all, but yeah, good job.
Oh, not at all. That wouldn't be us, no.
Yeah.
And we have the lovely Alex Holland on today. He lives in Cambridge, so he's in your neck of the woods. And he is a principal threat researcher at HPI's Security Lab.
Ooh, okay. That sounds great. And I think he's going to be covering a few interesting things for us, including the Wolf Security Threat Insights report.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They have a newly minted report out from Q3. So it's a quarter report. And they also have a blog out. So on the HP site, you can find those. We'll also have a link to that in the show notes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So in terms of the year in review, and then last week we did our kind of predictions, what's going to come up in 2026. And we felt quite strongly that there was no point in talking about M&A for the predictions because we know it's going to happen, right? It's one of these obvious things that's going to happen. However, it's important to look back at 2025 to see what the trends potentially will be. What happened before will potentially give us an indication of what's going to come next. So if we look at M&A, so we saw a kind of resurgence, a continued resurgence in merger and acquisition activity. And to put that into context, if we look backwards, there was kind of a low point. We're coming out of a low point, which was 2023. And that was low in terms of both the volume or number of acquisitions and then the value of M&A and P activity compared with the previous highs of 2021 and 2022. So 2023 was a low point. 2024 saw a significant uptick in both the volume and the value of M&A and P activity in the cybersecurity sector. And then for 2025, although we've not had the full year figures yet, because we're still in December, and many of the reviews that have been done go up until the end of Q3. However, 2025 is on track to equal or exceed 2021 and 2022 in terms of both volume and value.
Well, and value, it's not hard to see that, right? Just the Google acquires Wiz that we saw in Q2 of this year. That was a huge one. And there were other huge ones. Yeah. What else are you seeing in terms of the cyber sector M&A activity?
Yeah, well, there's this trend towards the larger transaction, as you pointed out. The whole Google Wiz thing was massive. So a rising proportion of deals over $250 million, right? There's plenty smaller ones kind of in the background all the time, but the number of deals over that value is significantly higher. And a lot of why this has happened, as we know, Christina, we've been talking about it all year. The strategic buyers and PE investors are focusing on what they can do with these high quality, mature assets to build comprehensive platforms and address the growing complexity of cyber threats. And that includes, companies providing AI tools and a specialty focus on certain areas, whether it's, threat identification, threat intelligence, automation,
MDR, right. MDR, or getting an EDR capability in-house. I mean, to your point, some of the capabilities that were purchased, I mean, CNAP was obvious with Google acquiring Wiz, and they're fully integrating that into the Google security landscape. So we'll see a lot coming out in 2026 around those capabilities that Wiz brings to the table. But other things were, an MDR platform when Zscaler acquired Red Canary in Q2, or, beefing up Bitdefender's email security portfolio with mesh security. And that was, an API-based mailbox level defense, right? So very specific capabilities that Bitdefender was looking for.
Exactly. And I think we noted it as the year progressed, because of some of the mega deals, which we're coming on to shortly. It meant that some of those deals that you mentioned, even though they were in the $400, $500, $600, $700 million range, which is pretty big, they tended to kind of go under the radar because they were overshadowed by some of the numbers from some of the mega acquisitions. So, for example, Proofpoint bought Hornet Security Group in May.
That's right.
And that was probably for over $1 billion. Normally would have made huge headlines, but it kind of was overshadowed by everything else that happened. It just so happened that May, Google bought Wiz
which was the Google Wiz, Google Wiz for $32 billion. I mean, a piddly little $1 billion. We don't want to pay attention to that, let alone only $675 million that Zscaler paid for, or intended to pay for Red Canary. That was also in May.
Yeah, exactly. The other company that we should mention, and they fall under one of the mega deals of the year, but also, part of this serial acquisition spree that's happening, and they've been buying companies for years, is our friends at Palo Alto Networks, right? So in July, they bought CyberArk for $25 billion. That was their 14th acquisition since 2019.
That's massive.
But they also, I mean, even though that was $25 billion is less than the $32 billion that Google paid for Wiz, Palo Alto Networks also bought Chronosphere, and that was in November, so just a few weeks ago, and that was for $3.35 billion.
Oh, but that's nothing. That's just tiny amounts of money.
Right.
I mean, when did $3.35 billion become tiny, or around $1 billion become tiny? Well, thank you, Google, for setting the bar. Yeah. Thank you, Palo Alto Networks, for setting the bar, right? So here we are with these massive acquisitions, to your point, and it is on track, right? We're on track to equal or better the 2021-2022 acquisition landscape with both volume and value. Crazy, huh?
And if we look at what's behind this, it's again back to two things. Well, one thing really, it's AI, right? It's AI, it's agentic AI, where a lot of the money was being thrown, like testing the spaghetti to see if it's ready, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks, is where companies were looking to either strategically restructure themselves along those lines, or they were buying in that functionality for automation, for autonomous agents or whatever. And that's something that we saw when we started to look at this more closely in the second quarter of this year. Yeah, so Christina, some of the acquisitions, it wasn't all plain sailing and money changing hands and moving on gaily into the next acquisition. Some things had a few hiccups along the way.
Well, that's right. And one of the bumpiest ones was the Trustwave Cybereason merger that was called off. That was early on in the year for us. And then it was abruptly called off. I mean, they were citing that they wanted to bring on some excellent EDR capabilities that Cybereason had, but there was a lot of leadership challenge. But then, to Level Blue's credit, they acquired Trustwave, and then they went back to the table with Cybereason. And they say that things have smoothed out. The leadership challenges, the investor that had changed hands to SoftBank for Cybereason is now very smooth sailing. And they are incorporating their own EDR technology going forward, which is a boon for them. It doesn't mean that they won't be vendor agnostic. They still will be vendor agnostic. But to have their own EDR, sensors, I think is also a good move for them. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the time when the merger was announced, first of all, there was a lot of sharp and take a breath going on because of the very public issues that were going on, the chaos and the drama. But actually, the way it's turned out now, I think, is much better. And also, we've commented on this before that Level Blue's capabilities are pretty sound, and then having a lot of the folk from Trustwave that were brought on board actually running the cybersecurity strategy for MDR, XDR, and so on is a really good idea. Typically, and we've commented on this before, typically people being brought on board, being merged, will often face the potential for being laid off. But in this way around, they've looked at the talent that they have available and what the strategic plan is, and then they've put those people in place. So that's good to see.
Well, and also they've been using Cybereason for 6 or 7 years. So the engineers, the analysts understand the technology, and in understanding that, it'll be hopefully easier to integrate into their Uber platform that they're building. So,
yes, exactly.
The other thing that happened in the second quarter, I know we're kind of jumping around here, folks, but we'll get back to the first quarter. But the other thing that happened in the second quarter of this year were these new AI agent frameworks, right? So things went from AI, which was, of course, the first quarter. The alien concept of AI was cemented into reality in the first quarter. But then we saw agents come on the scene in the second quarter, especially with a focus on agents in the security operations centers, or SOCs. So we saw IBM's Atom, the autonomous threat operations machine. That was end of April, beginning of May at RSA. We talked about that in episode 15. And then the NATO's Locked Shields exercise. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
If you would.
I think we looked at, given the geopolitical situation in Europe, particularly, and the role that the Western European countries have kind of taken on board at the moment, there was this exercise called Locked Shields, which was a cyber exercise. And it's for the first time it incorporated AI aspects into both attack and defense, right? So it's not just a kind of passive defensive exercise. It kind of signaled, and this is why we highlighted it, it signaled a kind of a new era of cyber warfare preparation,
right,
where nations are actively training to leverage and defend against AI-driven threats, right? So AI as sword, AI as shield, at the same time.
Well, indeed. And so that was really interesting to see. And I wonder if they used something like IBM's Atom or some other company's capabilities. I mean, Deepwatch launched something called Nexa, which had many different agents. On Tinu also, we had Alex Berger on, was it last episode, I think? And he was talking about, some of the agentic work that he's seeing. But the other thing that stands out from second quarter for me is the multiple conversations we had about the continued human element. Thank God, right? We keep joking that oh, we're doomed. But we're still very much a part of the equation, this human risk management that we talked about with Ryan LaSalle from NISOS, that this concept of human risk, but also the human being in the midst of this AI transformation. There is human risk we have to continuously track, to the NISO's point. But we also are blessed by having the nuance and the analysis and the model checking that is going on the AI side. So second quarter had, this big disruption with AI or agentic AI capabilities for defense, and then people starting to pick it up. Maybe NATO's Locked Shields exercise used it, but certainly IBM's Atom, Deepwatch, as I mentioned, on Tinu. But then humans are still very front and center.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we often, when we talk about artificial intelligence, machines and so on, there is this idea of the ghost in the machine.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, what's emerging as becoming quite clear is it's the human in the machine, or the human next to the machine, because that seems to be the only way it's going to actually work to our advantage, as in, human beings. Letting it do its own thing is not actually what we should be doing, either from a risk management or a kind of desired outcome side. So yeah, that definitely came out. So our special guest this week is Alex Holland, Principal Threat Researcher at the HP Security Lab. Welcome, Alex. How are you?
Thank you both. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Christina. I'm very well. I am now well in the mood for Christmas.
Ooh, great. Well, we know that it's a kind of a divisive issue sometimes. Some folk really love Christmas. Some folk don't like it so much. However, we are remaining festive on Cyber Sidekicks regardless. So we'll try and keep it flowing and in the mood for Santa coming when he does. We won't be reading any Christmas stories on this particular podcast.
We won't be singing any carols, no. But we will be doing our usual. I'm so glad you're festive and that you're ready for the holidays, Alex, because we're going to bring you back. We're going to bring you back to what keeps you up at night, because that's what we do. So, yeah, that's just our softball question. So what does keep you up at night, other than maybe too much eggnog?
Yeah, I mean, I am getting in the mood. So mulled wine is on the menu.
Yum.
I mean, actually, keeping in the festive mood, one of the things that keeps me up at night is actually church bells. Near where I live, I live very close to a medieval church. And on Tuesday evenings, the church bell ringers, they can ring their bells until 9 p.m. So that does keep me up if I'm trying to have an early night. Yes.
Yeah.
That is not something I would have expected, but how lovely to live near a medieval church most of the time. I mean, I'm sure it's annoying some of the time.
The pros far outweigh the cons, I can tell you, Christine.
Those are the bells up until 9 o'clock. What else is on your mind?
Well, I mean, I'm a security guy, so I mean, there's always stuff going on in the world of security, and I think in terms of what we're seeing in the threat research team, one of the things that's been playing on my mind is the fact that threats, specifically phishing and kind of deepfakes, are becoming so real that it's very difficult for people to tell what's real from what's fake. And I think that's going to become a bigger problem. How do we make sure that we know where data is coming from? It comes from trusted sources.
And when you and I met this last just a few weeks ago in New York City, you were showing us some of the impersonations or deep fakes or the secure connect that folks use for RDP, or you were talking quite a bit about how this is becoming an issue for the regular Joe, the regular employee, to suss out that they're having some false direction implanted and then their system potentially taken over.
Yeah, completely. And the big trend is that, yes, we've been seeing phishing for decades and decades, right? But over the past year, the quality of the social engineering has dramatically improved. And now it's not simply static web pages and well-worded phishing emails. We're actually seeing animated email lures and websites that look really slick and really in keeping with the brands that are being impersonated. And if you're an employee receiving one of these emails, it's super easy to fall for one of these attacks.
It's interesting. We saw this, Alex, we covered this topic during I think it was in Brazil, South America. Yeah, it was. It was a Latin American kind of equivalent of Black Friday that they had earlier this year. And it was the first time that many folk had been extensively shopping online. And there was something, I don't know, like 2,000 fake branded websites, even for companies that like Coke or Amazon or whatever, that were coming up when folk were looking for bargains, and they were very, very accurate replications of fairly well-known websites.
Yeah, completely. And I think one which stands out in my mind is that we detected one campaign in our recent threat insights report that we published last week that looked at brand impersonation of Adobe. And in that campaign, the attackers pretended to deliver an Adobe software update. But the kind of shocking thing there was that they had absolutely nailed the visual identity of that brand. And they even included a fake progress bar that showed how quickly your software download was progressing. In fact, that was all fake. Nothing was happening in the background. And then once that progress bar reached 100%, your web browser would download a file purporting to be that Adobe update. But of course, it turned out to be malware.
Right.
And implanted in that were what, InfoStealer malware, or what were they implanting into that?
So in that case, it was actually an interesting one because the software they used isn't per se malicious. It wasn't designed to be used as what we call a remote access Trojan or a remote access tool.
Yeah.
A rat, exactly.
Yeah.
But in this case, the attackers had modified it such that the software connects back to servers that they control. So they were abusing a legitimate remote support software tool for their own purposes.
Huh. The other thing that I found odd, interesting, funny, not so funny, were that, was the expression that the attackers are eating warm cookies. And of course, it brings me right to the Christmas cookie idea because, I'm baking a lot for the holidays. But as I read further, cookies are not such a good thing. And you introduced this also when we met earlier this month. Tell us a little bit about the session cookie hijacking increase that you're seeing right now.
Yeah, this is a massive trend that we're seeing. So no longer do system administrators use a dedicated workstation behind a perimeter, back in the day in a data center somewhere. Nowadays, a lot of privileged service administration actually happens in the web browser, and attackers are actually adapting the way they are targeting and breaching organizations by extracting.
But doesn't MFA help? I mean, wouldn't MFA help, or passwordless auth or something?
It's a good start, but actually in these attacks, the attackers are extracting the entire session, bypassing the authentication step. They're stealing the entire session and impersonating you. And what comes with that is all of your privileges.
Whoa. Well, then what can we do with that? I mean, you very kindly offered some things that folks can do to defend against that.
Well, the traditional solution, and this is best practice historically, is you really want to enforce strong separation of privileges. And the way you would do this is by having two separate systems. So one system for risky, low privileged activity, checking emails, productivity, office editing, and a dedicated system that's just for doing those high privileged administrative tasks.
Yeah,
So
but
separate high from
that's
low.
costly. I mean, that's really a lot of money for them to carry around two different systems, and don't a lot of people work remotely now, right? So that they'll have to lug around. Oh, I'm going to my coffee shop office, and I'm going to bring my privileged workstation with me. I don't know that that's a good idea, right?
It's not ideal. Yeah, you highlight two of the common pain points that organizations encounter, which is firstly, you have this cost burden of buying a separate device. And then secondly, it's also more to manage.
So, okay, so what can they do then? You were starting to go down that road and I probably interrupted you and I'm so sorry about that. But they can set up separate, not just MFA and not just using a separate device, but they can also do what?
Yeah, so this is where having strong hardware-linked application isolation comes to play. Because effectively, with the technology that we have nowadays, you can enforce that strong separation of privileges on a single device.
Like a micro VM, and you were talking about this a few weeks ago when we met. Yeah, and that was fascinating to me, actually, the old Bromium technology that HP brought in, many years ago. But yeah, speak a little bit more about this micro VM thing. And it was such a mystery to me because you've got something bad happening, but you can isolate it. In my mind, I go to kind of the old honeypot exercise, right? You'd get everything into this honeypot, and the attacker thinks they're in a regular website and they're looking through all of your details on your website, or they're in your systems, and then all of a sudden it gets blown up because it is not real and it's actually the defenders. But in this case, it's virtual machine technology. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you're actually spot on. It's essentially the inversion of that. So one illustration I like to use is, you can think of the data and the services that you want to protect as being a chicken coop. And in this case, we want to protect the chicken. And
we don't want those foxes getting in.
Precisely. So rather than having as you described, a honeypot where we're trying to keep the bad, which would be analogous to a zoo, keep the animals in and stop them from escaping, here we want to stop any threats, any malware that might be on the host system from being able to access our mission critical data and app.
So the malware is already in the chicken coop, just to continue beating this metaphor to a pulp. The malware is already in the chicken coop. It's inside that fenced off area.
If we use the zoo analogy, the animals are within the zoo, and we are enclosing them there so that they can't escape. So essentially, there are two illustrations. One illustration illustrates sure access, which is using micro VMs to protect privileged access and services. So the illustration there is that you have stuff you want to protect from outside threats. So I think of a chicken coop. I don't want my chickens to be eaten by foxes who want to break in. And there's a separate illustration for the opposite technology, which is actually what you described with the sandbox technology, where you have threats which are contained and can't spread and do harm to the rest of the system. So that's analogous to a zoo, where you're trying to stop your animals from escaping and causing havoc.
Oh, so much clearer. I really appreciate that clarification, and thank you so much, Alex. And we don't typically talk a lot about specific capabilities within specific companies, but I appreciate in this particular case drilling down a bit into the sure access and the sure click, because it is using this micro VM technology to defend against something like session cookie hijacking. So I do really appreciate that you've given us a little bit more context there. What else is top of mind before we let you go? Because we've talked about medieval church bells, we've talked about warm cookies, we've talked about info stealer malware. What else is top of mind?
I mean, it wouldn't be a podcast about security if I didn't mention AI and security.
Oh no,
sorry.
Is that bad?
This is the producer cutting in here to say, as soon as we hear that, it's like, you know.
No,
get the shepherd's crook on and pull them off.
No, honestly, Alex, it's brilliant that we haven't talked about it yet with you until minute 15 or whatever it is. But yes, you're absolutely right. And I will override the producer's shepherd hook and say, please tell us what your thoughts are on AI.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we separate out the hype from reality. Yes. And the way that we see AI for attack is that this is a nascent technology that is rapidly getting better and better. It was ChatGPT's third birthday recently. And when you compare the capabilities of generative AI 3 years ago to now, things have gotten way better.
Yes.
And of course, attackers are using this. So the way I talk about how attackers are making use of this new technology is that AI is a force multiplier. It helps them to scale up their attack. And more broadly across the past year, we've been seeing what I call the 2 A's, the acceleration of these AI advancements and also an automation of cybercrime, or at least a beginning of automation of cybercrime. And so over the last 3 years, generative AI has been mainly focused on easier tasks. If you imagine an attack lifecycle, on the left-hand side, you have your preparatory steps that you need to take in order to deliver an attack. So that could include creating a fake website, creating a phishing email. And these were the tasks that attackers are focusing on. But increasingly, we're seeing attackers use large language models to also assist with harder tasks in the attack lifecycle. So writing scripts to deliver malware, to even helping them to weaponize vulnerabilities. Now, we're not saying that we're seeing 100% automated attacks right now, but when you look at the longer term trend, combined with the advancement of these AI technologies, you can quickly imagine a future where attackers are really stepping up their game, really accelerating their activity. And as defenders, we need to make sure that we have the right protections in place to defend against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Alex. We'll probably have to call it there. It's been a great discussion. I appreciate you taking the time. I particularly
it's my pleasure.
No, I particularly liked the zoo and animal analogies. So
that you understood right away,
yes.
Which I didn't quite get.
Well, in as much as over the years I've owned many hens and have had issues with them being predated. I don't know if either of you have owned hens before. Certainly,
I have not. But I have friends who have many stories about.
So the thing about it, typically, the fox is the bad one and is most maligned. The thing about foxes, you can protect hens from foxes if you have a fenced-in area with chicken wire or whatever. And that's fine. If you let them wander around, of course they'll be predated on. But the foxes will go in and they'll take a hen and run off with it. What we found was worse than that was the pine marten. I don't know if you guys have encountered them.
I'm not familiar, no.
Yeah, pine marten or American marten, Christina, up in your neck of the woods. Pine marten is a member of the weasel family and they love chickens. Now, the thing about them is they're small and they're sleek and they're very stealthy. So they can hide very easily, and they are in the trees. So they can climb trees, they can climb fences, they can go under things, they'll dig a hole. But typically what they do is they go into the hen coop, even if you shut everything, they will squeeze through and they will kill everything. And then at some point in the future, they'll come back and take a hen, maybe one, because they're only small, they don't need much. So for me, in many ways, the pine marten is almost like this sort of modern evolution of cyber threat, particularly for critical infrastructure, right? They're less easy to detect. They're very stealthy. They go in and destroy everything. They don't take anything as such. They're not looking to extract something. So that kind of struck me as potentially, AI-powered cyber threats are kind of like the pine martens of the hen breeders world. That was it, really.
I love that. Thank you for building on that illustration.
Some things in the world of poultry farming you cannot keep out. Anyway,
I think there's Rory. I think you're making a point about resilience.
Yes,
back.
Indeed, indeed. Resiliency is something that came through for quite a few of our guests during the year, didn't it, Christina?
It did.
And in some ways, you can protect against resiliency, but it comes at a cost, and sometimes it's not practical, particularly for some of the smaller organizations. Or you say, well, this is how resilient we can be, and we're just going to have to kind of write off a certain amount of information, data, hens, or whatever.
Wow. Brilliant and fun discussion. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you for jumping on last minute, talking about so many interesting factoids and trends, and for letting us devolve into the pine marten discussion.
Yes.
No, I love this. I love thinking outside the box.
Well, next week's Pinecast will be... We'll be
about foxes, hens, and pine martens.
Yes, and how the practical suggestions for keeping them secure. Yes.
Yeah, but Alex, will you come on again when we're a little bit more refreshed in the new year with some new? Oh, that would be so great with some new threat findings, and we'll have you back. Meanwhile, have a wonderful holiday.
Oh, thank you, and likewise.
Great.
Yeah, wishing you a very peaceful holiday.
Yes. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Yeah, that was a really interesting chat with Alex Holland there, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting. He's so kind and articulate and interesting to listen to when it comes to the different threats that are out there. And he gets so excited about them, which is... I love talking to threat researchers, so that was great. And then, of course, talking about the analogies or the metaphors. I always mix those up.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, indeed. It's always good when folks, just to kind of reiterate, the people that we have on, we try to make sure, in fact, we know that they are passionate and interested in what they do and what they like to talk about, and we hope that comes across. And we will continue that into 2026. So
indeed,
next week, we shall be doing part 2 of our year in review. So we'll be looking at a little bit more detail at some of the other trends. We'll be discussing our heroes of the year and maybe mentioning some zeros of the year as well. Well,
the ho-hummers.
Yes, and the ho-hummers, but also talking about what things we thought were really, really interesting and perhaps that we should keep an eye on in 2026. So what else, Christina?
Yeah, no, I think that'll be great. We'll finish up the year. So this episode comes out right before Christmas, and then the next one that is our second part comes out right before the new year rings in. So for those of you, as we said earlier, who need help getting to sleep, you can listen to us as you as you fade off into the sunset. But in the meanwhile, if you would be so kind, we'd love you to sign up for our newsletter, Signal Not Noise. You can find that on our homepage of richmondadvisory.com. And also do get in touch directly with us. We always love hearing from you. My email is Christina@richmondadvisorygroup.com.
And I'm Rory at richmondadvisorygroup.com. And with that, we'd like to thank you for listening. Hope you can tune in again next week. And stay safe.
Yes.
And
stay safe.
Stay
and
safe.
Enjoy the holidays.
Enjoy the
holidays.
Indeed. And we look forward to you joining us again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.